Hey everybody, Jason Bermas here, and it is my pleasure to welcome a fellow truth teller, a true pioneer, a maverick, if you will, in independent media in these ever-growing, uncertain times to kind of go over not only what's happening in Canada with Justin Trudeau openly announcing that this indeed is about Agenda 2030, and it is about pre-planned actions that have nothing to do with COVID-1984, but also want to get his take from our neighbor to the north on what's happening in this election, selection, whatever you want to call it, what the media looks like over there, and the continued hurdles that this gentleman has to go through just to get people to visit his social media or even his website, pressfortruth.ca. And don't forget to follow him on Twitter at Dan Dix PFT. Mr. Dix, how are you, sir?
I am doing very well, all things considering that we're currently navigating this post-COVID-1984 nightmare, as you say. But having said that, I'm doing just fine, Jason.
Well, it's always good to see you, Dan, and I like to see you in good spirits. I myself have been in pretty good spirits by just kind of like changing my scenery, getting out of New York, getting into Iowa. However, this one is kind of a new story because it just happened to me. I'm going to be, hopefully, calling my first ever MMA event here in Iowa. Obviously, very stoked on that. And one of the reasons that I came here is that they were having live sporting events. And this weekend, we have back-to-back MMA over at CagedAggression.tv. Well, we were just at the venue, and, the guy in his little office was like, we've got the highest infection rate in the nation, and the governor's making an announcement at 6, and I can tell you right now, I don't think this is happening. And, just seemed like he not only was buying into the propaganda of COVID-1984, but happy to do so and happy to shut those doors. So I want to ask you, before we get into Justin Trudeau, what he said, do you see that a lot where you are, where people are now kind of just circumventing reality and saying, well, I'm okay with this, and okay, the infections are there, we're just going to go with this new normal, and we're not going to push back? Or are you seeing the opposite of that and more people wanting to push back?
Well, there's a little bit of both. There is a small pocket of the growing resistance, which is exponentially growing. But at the same time, just by simply looking around, for example, when you go to the grocery store these days, it's gone from maybe 40 to 50 to 60% to 95% of the people who are wearing masks. So that goes to say a lot. That says there's a lot of fear out there. And a lot of this is obviously stemming from the television and the information that they're getting from the health officials. And, if they actually look at the numbers with a little bit of context, there wouldn't be so much fear. So as we're seeing right now today, the case numbers are going up. Yes, of course they are, because the testing is going up to an insane amount, an exponential degree. So of course cases are going up. But death rates are staying relatively flatline. Hospital visits are going down. These numbers have to be taken into consideration for contextual purposes when looking at these things, because really, COVID is not that bad, Jason. It's quite comparable to a common cold or a regular flu. If people were getting tested en masse like they are today for COVID for the flu, of course we would see bigger numbers. But that's just not happening. So we need context in these numbers, and so that these business owners can make properly rational decisions and not just based on fear of, oh my God, I don't want to put my customers in danger. Of course they don't. Nobody wants to, but they have to understand what the real danger is. It's not COVID-19 that is shutting down your government, your business. It's the government that is shutting you down. And that's the big problem moving forward, Jason. So that's what I've been exposing lately. The government is the problem, not so much COVID-19.
And I don't know if you've seen this yet, but there's an article out of the British Medical Journal talking about politics, COVID-19 84, and the tyranny that is surrounding it and the misinformation. This is a medical journal that's been around 180 years. And despite the fact that this is put out by one of their executive editors at this medical journal, you will see it nowhere in the mainstream media. Just like you are not seeing this clip right here, which we're about to play for everybody, in any type of context to say, hey, wait a minute. I thought that this was about a virus and keeping everybody safe and then going back to normal after a new normal. No, no, no. This is about a great financial reset and preconceived agendas of globalism. Hear it from the mouths of babes. Dan Dix's overlord over in Canada, Justin Trudeau.
Building back better means getting support to the most vulnerable while maintaining our momentum on reaching the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the SDGs. Canada is here to listen and to help. This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems that actually address global challenges like extreme poverty, inequality, and climate change.
Now, what I heard there was pre-planned agendas, opportunities, 2030, sustainability, and climate change. Was I missing something there, Dan?
Don't forget reset. This guy just laid out everything that we've been warning about for this entire year in basically less than a 30-second soundbite. He basically, proved us right. What we were called conspiracy theorists for just 6 months ago, Jason, is now becoming fact because the Prime Minister says so. So when he openly talks about sustainable development, he's talking about Agenda 2030, formerly known as Agenda 21, which really should be called Agenda 2020, Jason, because it seems they've fast-tracked things. They're just skipping a whole decade and launching this thing now, it seems like. And when he's referencing these things while also talking about this reset, of course, we know of the Great Reset coming from the World Economic Forum, which is essentially trying to establish a think tank for how to navigate the post-COVID 1984 world, but how to gain a little tighter grip of control moving forward. So here we have it. It's now blatantly being talked about in the open. So, maybe people should pay attention to the things that we're saying now and maybe saying, oh, you guys are just a little bit worried about this. This is conspiracy theory. Yeah, well, time and time again, Jason, we're continued to be proven correct later down the line. And here's another prime example from the Prime Minister, Justine Trudeau.
Justine! I love that evil-looking goatee. It's got kind of a Faustian Satanism flair, if you will, Dan. Now, I'm not sure, since you brought up the Great Reset, since you brought up Klaus Schwab, and he seems to be the front man for this, the leader of the World Economic Forum, I was wondering, have you seen the recent clip that's put out there where he's talking about how the fourth industrial revolution, basically what's going on right now, is going to be a combination of one's physical, digital, and biological identity? That's making the rounds now. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen the clip, but it doesn't come as any kind of a surprise. Again, we don't have a crystal ball. We're not predicting the future. We're coming up with a calculated, educated guess based on our research of what is going to happen. And the fact that he's saying this today is no surprise to me whatsoever. But it should be a surprise to people that they're essentially trying to normalize transhumanism moving forward. This is essentially what they're now openly talking about. Again, you take us back a few years ago, Jason, we're wild conspiracy theorists for even suggesting such a thing. Well, now the head of the World Economic Forum is saying it, so it must be true, just like Justin Trudeau. It's just unbelievable that we've arrived at this stage in the game. And that's why I say maybe 2030 should be relabeled as 2020, because it seems like they're going for it, man. They're just going at all angles right now.
And for those that think that I was conflating that, we're going to listen to him verbatim say those words right here, right now. Hey, Klaus?
It's at the end, what the fourth industrial revolution will lead to is a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities.
So our physical, our biological, and our digital identities. You know what he didn't talk about? Our morality or our spiritual identities, because that's non-existent to these people. And Dan, I recently did a broadcast where I put all this stuff together. I showed Gates in 1998 with Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum talking about the 21st century economy and how it would be reshaped. And then I also played a 2016 keynote speech by Joey B before he was totally Zombie Joe. You start to see a little bit of that. You know, he's aging a little bit. It's at the tail end of his vice presidency. But what was really interesting is the keynote speech was not just at the World Economic Forum, not just him literally hugging Klaus and having a big love fest over their meetings of the last 20 plus years. And Klaus saying, you know, he was one of the hardest working senators back in the day, taking all these meetings. No, giving a speech on this fourth industrial revolution, talking about the hollowing out of the middle class and how it's already taken place, and even discussing automation nations and biological advances where they're able to treat diseases in utero and individualize cancer treatments. So everything you just heard by Klaus Schwab has now come out of the mouths of babes, or the front man for this globalization via America with a triple K, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on the ongoing selection or election, I guess, controversy that's happening right now? And do you think that Joey B going in is going to be any different than Donald Trump at the end of the day? Does he get in? What are your thoughts surrounding this whole thing right now?
Well, at this stage in the game right now, Jason, I would just say it's not over. I mean, the Associated Press, the media has essentially declared this thing by, extrapolating and projecting the numbers. But obviously, there's some major court cases in the works. A lot of the ones launched by the people have been shut down, but Trump's about to launch his own. So it remains to be seen. So the fact of the matter is, we don't know yet, and the results could very well change. Now, if it does come down to a Supreme Court ruling and Biden is overruled and Trump gets in, I think we're going to see crazy times. I think we're going to see the not so tolerant left burn up the cities. If Biden gets in, the Trump people aren't going to do anything. They're not violent like that. They'll probably just leave. There'll just be a mass exodus or something. But to your question as to whether or not anything matters as to who gets in, not exactly. I think there's an agenda by the deep state, the secret governments, the powers that ought not to be, as I call them, or the predator class, as you like to call them. They have an agenda in 2021 to lock down society, to go into the Middle East, to take over Iran and Syria. And I think these agendas are going to continue, whether it's Trump or Biden. It really doesn't matter at this stage in the game. Now, how foreign policy is going to be played out and how the lockdowns are going to be carried out at home will vary depending on who ends up being selected for that position, but it's not going to vary much. So at this stage in the game, voting for the lesser evils is just not a viable solution moving forward. I'm surprised people don't notice this cycle year after year after year of this controlled opposition, two wings of the same bird, two sides of the same coin. It's been clear to me for a number of years, Jason. So really, it's tough to say at this point, but I think at the end of the day, the secret government wins. The deep state is going to win, no matter if it's Biden or Trump. America loses, in my opinion.
I agree, and I think it's chaos 2020. I think that we're a long ways off before somebody is actually inaugurated. I think there's going to be a massive amount of people on both sides that are going to be unhappy no matter what, whether it's Trump or Biden, and especially the left, because now not only did they buy into the fact that Biden was going to be the president, but that's been hammered home for almost 2 weeks by every mainstream outlet out there. And if there's anything that we can correlate with, media muppets puppeteering the same thing, is that people absorb that and then they say the same thing again and again and again. So the emotions could run high with Trump getting back in there. I have not seen any of the evidence he was supposedly going to put out today. But two of the things that struck me as important is, number one, during the Operation Warp Speed press conference from a few days ago, he spoke out against lockdowns. He said he would not lock down the country. That would not be part of his program. I think that is important. That is something that was underreported, if reported at all in the media. And then just yesterday, Scott Atlas was attacked for daring to tell the people of Michigan to push back against the lockdowns imposed on them this week there. You know, Scott Atlas seems to be the antithesis of the Faucian language that we're so used to, and that Faucian language told us via Jake Tapper yesterday that no, after a vaccine, we're still going to need social distancing and masks, Dan. So what was your take on that little snippet and soundbite of Fauci now admitting that even vaccines will not bring the society back to normal?
Well, honestly, I don't think, I think that it just shows it's not necessarily going to be up to Trump and this Operation Warp Speed or any varying degrees of lockdowns is not going to be, his decision or Biden's decision essentially moving forward. It's going to be the decision of the deep state. And we know that this is what they're working on. And, Trump may be able to, stave things off in certain ways, but obviously we know he's promised certain things before. Like, look, last time leading up to the election, how many times did we hear him say he was going to get Hillary Clinton arrested? And how many people got super excited about that? And sure enough, look where we are. Did that happen? No, not even close. So if he's saying, don't worry, I'm not going to lock you down, well, it's not really up to him. And, so I don't want people to put too much hope into that moving forward. In fact, the hope has to come out of these men. People have to stop looking for that and voting for other people to fix the problems that are essentially created by the very people they're trying to get in. What we need to do, Jason, is start focusing on becoming self-sustainable, becoming off the grid, becoming debt-free, learning how to grow your own food, all these things, completely disassociating yourself from the system entirely. That's the most important thing moving forward. It always has been, but now it's crunch time. So if you have it within your means out there to maybe start a homestead or to start a garden or to start learning how to not rely on the grocery store or the banks or the governments in any way, you're going to be far better off moving forward as we continue to navigate this space in 2021. So for me, that's what I'm focusing on now, Jason, getting ready to just really hunker down and do the homesteading thing.
And yeah, one of the big things I've told my audience is that, especially in New York, where you see more and more authoritarianism, where just over a week ago, the New York State Bar Association passed the fact that, yes, this is a mandatory COVID-19 84 vaccine. And they have suggested in their own white papers that it should be nationally mandated and that the Constitution has failed us to go to a constitutionally strong community, whether that be a county, a city, or a state, and get to know those around you, because it is going to take us en masse pushing back. And the thing is, we've already waited too long to push back. I know you were at those anti-lockdown protests in the very beginning of this, but the vast majority of Americans and people around the globe, actually, whether they realize it or not, have a large authoritarian boot on their jugular as they are gasping for air on the ground, and they're wondering whether they should push back. They need to slice the Achilles heel of this motherfucker, put him on the ground, and say, no, never again. And that's the bottom line. And until people are willing to get that aggressive, and we're talking metaphorically, obviously, no one physically has that boot on our throat, but it sure feels that way when I walk into an establishment and I'm treated like shit because I don't have a mask on. Or I want to fly somewhere and I'm mandated to wear it the entire time. And then I'm supposed to quarantine myself in certain areas and take tests that come up negative or positive almost on a random basis. Forget about Elon Musk testing positive twice in a day and negative twice in the same day. How about Erykah Badu having her left nostril test positive and her right nostril test negative at the same exact time? We are literally living under one of the most ludicrous, outward Orwellian times that means everything to humanity as they try to usher in this track trace database society with a medical martial law flavor, Dan. So tell people what you've got coming up, how they can support you via other platforms, because you've already been booted from this one. I watched your kicked off a YouTube party with James Corbett. I enjoyed the hat and the little blowy thing. It's always nice to have a party. So how can people continue to support you and watch your very important work, Dan?
Well, right now, the best way is probably to go to pressfortruth.ca. My website, everything goes there. And if you click on, my daily posts, for instance, today I did a video about Christmas and the coming lockdown measures that they have planned for Christmas. Well, when you click on those posts, you'll see links to where you can watch it on BitChute or Float or Minds or Library or YouTube. I don't recommend that one, but it'll be there. And so everybody can find that at pressfortruth.ca. And then at pressfortruth.ca/donate is where you can find all the links to where you can financially support me moving forward. Because as you say, Jason, I'm so seriously on the chopping block. Recently, they took down my Twitter, my Facebook, my YouTube, my GoFundMe, my MailChimp, it coming at all angles here. So I certainly need people's support in that way too. So pressfortruth.ca and pressfortruth.ca/donate.
Folks, the digital tyranny is here, and Dan Dix has been one of the people at the forefront battling that digital tyranny. And believe me, in a time where elections cannot even be questioned, when doctors can be silenced, when journalists like Dan can literally be digitally erased with the snap of a finger, we need to support him and others like him. Dan, thank you so much. We're going to have you on in the next couple of weeks and really talk about what's going to happen in this election or selection in the world, my friend.
For sure. Well, let's do some back-to-back vids. I got to get you on PFT again as well, man. So thanks for having me on today, though. Keep up the great work.
Love you, Dan. Everybody, that's Dan Dix of Press for Truth. He does amazing work. Please consider supporting him. And remember, here over at the Burmis Brigade, we also are what? Fully demonetized. We are fully demonetized for 7+ months, and we don't expect to ever be monetized again or acknowledged. Because, hey, we got it reviewed, right? We can't even get a review on a thumbnail. We can't get a review on a thumbnail on this channel. That's where we're at. Okay? So $5, $10, $15, it means the world to me. Big donors, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We are actually on pace as of today to possibly hit our goal, which is amazing. Make sure you're making the free Rockfin account right now. Okay? 11 a.m., 5 days a week. 11 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, over at Rockfin, exclusives, live. Make the free account. If you do go premium, awesome. You get all the premium content, not only from myself, but other great creators out there as well. And remember to check out all the documentary films, Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order to Find, and Shade the Motion Picture. Thumbs the video up, subscribe, share, ring that bell, join the Burmis Brigade. I love you guys, and I'll see you all on the flip side.